Short game wise, yes, I can. Long game wise, no. No, I have not.
He's talking the long game.
They played the long game.
They gotta play the long game.
They're experienced and they played the long game.
No, you're talking the long game.
They're experienced and they played the long game.
Very nice.
Long game is back.
All right, Case. I'm using my green pen in honor of your boy Charley Hoffman this week. Sorry about that.
Too soon. It's too soon. I'm still walking that one off from yesterday.
So I watched the first football game that I've watched all year, and then I texted you, and you said I haven't even flipped over yet. You were just locked in to the Charley Hoffman playoff. Did you feel like he was going to lose the whole time?
I felt like he was going to lose when Nick Taylor hit that shot on 16 to, I don't know, whatever it was. Close enough that he made that birdie.
12 feet,
and then he
15
turned
feet.
into, 99, 2000 Tiger Woods for the remainder of the day. Yeah, it was quite a run. I didn't expect it, obviously, but my wife was like, "Did you bet on this guy?" I was like, "A little bit." But it doesn't, I'm not even like, I don't care about the money. I want it for the pod, which is either really sad or really, I don't know.
And
endearing.
I didn't pay attention to much. What was there internet chatter? Or have you listened to any other podcasts? You listen to like Shotgun Start or anything? Was there any other Charley,
no.
like where did he come from? What just happened narrative that you've seen?
No. And to be honest, like, so we were recording on a Monday morning after this happened Sunday night last night. I think I went like right to it was almost halftime at the Super Bowl. I feel like when it ended or close to that, at least past the first quarter. I had no energy for the Super Bowl, and I had no energy for watching any of the, post-game golf stuff and reaction. And yeah, I should have known, but I mean, my God, Nick Taylor turned into an incredible, he's a good golfer, but he birdied 5 of the last 6 holes. He had to birdie 18, I think 3 straight times, and he did. And 2 of the 3 times he drove the ball into a bunker and it just rolled out twice. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
Casey texted me last night. He said, if we ever play golf together, I should bet on you, and then I'll guarantee myself that I go shoot 58 that day.
I can move lines just by betting them.
Hey, real quick. So we're going to make picks, but we are recording this intro quickly before an interview. Do you want to intro our guests that we're going to have on today real quick? Since you're hosting today and you got a little bit of the pregame nerves, pregame jitters, why don't you get some words out?
Yeah, well, the podcast numbers have been good, so Dave thought, how can we self-sabotage this? So I'm gonna screw this up today. We get Brendon de Jonge on the program today. I don't want to call him a journeyman. He played on the tour for, I don't know, 6-7 years. He retired a few years ago, and now he's kind of doing the media thing too. So I wanted to have him on, have good perspective on just making the tour. We talk a lot about grinders here. He was, I guess you could put him in that status back in the day. So it'd be fun to talk to someone who's actually.
Did you look up his career? Did you look up his career earnings?
I haven't yet. No.
You want to guess?
I don't. And whatever it is, he had a great.
Is it out of respect? Is it out of respect for him?
Go ahead, tell me.
You want to talk about money?
I'm still hurting after this Charley Hoffman thing. I can't even look at a wallet or anything to do with money. 150 to 1, Dave. I had him 150 to 1.
Yeah, it's you've had a weird run, a very weird run of gambling. Just the most random people. We almost had a Doug Gibbs sighting, but yeah, you've had some weird. You've had some just very random bets, and then like these guys seem to be in the mix, and then they like eject in the worst way. Oh, Charley didn't eject; he just didn't win, which is a shame. Mr. de Jonge has earned $11,568,484 in his career. So
pretty impressive. And
over
we'll get into this
million.
with him. Yeah, we'll get into this with him. But and we talked a few weeks ago about something similar, but how these tour players from 10, 15 years ago must feel now just watching signature events and live. So we'll get his perspective on that. But pretty respectable for when he played, when Tiger was taken, number one most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's made $11.5 million in their life doing anything, playing golf, certainly much respect from us. All right, so we have the Genesis this week, formerly the LA Open, at
Formerly the
Riv.
Northern Trust,
That's the
formerly
Northern
a
Trust.
million different things.
That's what this as I've become more of a golf nerd, everybody talks about Riv. That's like with the tour, the players on tour, they talk about it like this
Yeah.
is the place. So, and a lot of excitement. Tiger's in the field this week. I saw you're really excited about his new clothing. It's not Malbon, and
No,
we
and
have an
everything in the
awesome.
golf world happens on Monday when we record. So by the time people hear this, it will be have been out for 3 days. But
Yeah.
Tiger apparently is releasing his new line today.
All right, so let's make our picks. Do you want to just go first, and I'm happy to give you the Tiger pick. Just you can do the honors.
Well,
Since
I
you,
get first pick because last week I won, and just
Okay.
a real recap on that, I've retaken the lead with my Charley Hoffman pick. I'm now
Congrats.
up on you in our season-long race. Yeah, and real quick, I'll also just say we're only like 2 months into this, picking guys outside the 150 usually every week, except for this week. We've both picked Kevin Streelman, and he's withdrawn on both of us. So that this is kind of our voodoo doll for Kevin Streelman here when we pick him, and he immediately withdraws from a tournament. So
Have some
anyway, I had a
respect.
good week with Charlie. You had a good week with Doug Gim, but I've overtaken you. I've got 4 million for the year now. You've got 3.5. So that's where we're at now. First pick for the Genesis. I don't think we need to do a title sponsor challenge. I think you understand. You know what Genesis is, but if
Yeah.
not, raise your hand.
No, it's a car. It's a car that I always think is like a Bentley, but it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Okay. So for first pick this week, I'm going to go with my boy Rory because I want him on the pod, and I think he's played well here before at Riviera.
Okay, shout out to you, Rory. I'm gonna pick Victor. I love Victor. I want a reason to watch him this weekend, so I'm gonna pick Victor. And do I get to go back to back? That's how this
Of
works.
course, we're going to get a hold of this one day. Yeah.
I'm gonna pick the flusher, Mr. Ludwig.
I like that. Some unfinished business from Pebble Beach a few weeks ago. All right, 2 in a row.
I'm going no Americans, by the way. Go ahead.
I love it. I'm going to go Cam Young, who has played well the last
Trending. Cam is trending. Cam's a guy that I love. I would love to see Cam I would love to see Cam be a top 5, top 10 player in the world and win PGA Tour events regularly.
Yeah, great. I wouldn't say a great like textbook swing, but a interesting swing.
Great swing.
He's never won. He's never won.
He's never won. That's kind of
so he's the next guy up.
That is crazy.
And for my third and last, I'm going to take Patrick Cantlay just to stick it to you.
What the heck, man? All right, I'm gonna violate. I'm not gonna violate my non-US guys. I like my Matt Fitzpatrick. So I got the all-world team this week. I got Victor, I got Matt Fitz, and I got Mr. Ludwig.
This is nice. We can just relax and watch Tiger. We don't have to have a rooting interest.
Yeah, you won't be relaxed.
He'll win this week, and I would have been staring at a 150 to 1 again.
Yeah.
So I'll get screwed somehow this week. But thoughts and prayers to Rory, Cam Young, and Patrick Cantlay for the jinx I just put on for this.
Yeah.
Week.
What? So real quick, give me 1 or 2 minutes about what do you want to get out of this interview with Mr. de Jonge?
I really want to just know what it's like to. He played against Tiger Woods in the President Cup in 2013. Actually beat him playing with Ernie Els. So anyone who's just squared off in the arena with Tiger, I want to know a lot about that. But also just day-to-day tour life. I'm fascinated by kind of the mundane aspect of getting from one place to the next. If you're bunking up with friends or hotel life, and especially coming from Zimbabwe where he grew up and learned how to play. So that's for me. How about you?
I'm excited to just come along for the ride. You have some great notes, some great prep. I want to talk about just the golf game, like just his game, where it's at today, things he sees from amateurs, just overall golf philosophy. We often see this idea of like swing your swing. He doesn't have one of those textbook kind of cookie cutter swings, but he's got a nice little repeatable motion. I'd love to talk to him about that. But hey, real quick before we go, I spent an hour this morning down at Janko's Golf Garage, and he's become friends with this guy David Orr. And David Orr is one of the top 50 golf instructors in the world. He was Justin Rose's putting coach and a couple other guys, and they become friends and share a bond of like skiing. And I guess he comes up here and they hang out. He's from the Carolina area, and so I got an hour one-on-one with him this morning doing a putting lesson.
Wow.
And it was amazing. He was like, he gave me 3 really small tips about, we got on like the putting lab to see all my putting plane and path and where I'm hitting it. And it's even in such a small thing like putting, just within 10 minutes, he's like, nope, nope, nope. And tightened me up really nice. I posted a little video on Instagram earlier, but just a shout out to Janko for becoming friends with him and bringing him in. And just, it was cool to get that level of knowledge about putting. Now all day I'm going to be under the table, just kind of working on my one little thing, like just little ways you hold your wrist matter so much in the putting stroke. And it just made me think about how sideways you can go out on the course without even knowing it.
Very cool. Yeah, you don't see many people doing that. We talked before about catching people in public doing the swing motion, but you don't see many people doing the putting motion at the grocery store. So
yeah. All right. We got to hang up. We got to go on our other line to bring in our guests today. And I'm excited. I'm excited for this conversation.
Me too.
All right.
And Rory, come on the pod.
They played the long game.
All right, we get a very special guest this week. You may know him as he's a PGA Tour veteran. He hosts the Wagyu and Filet podcast with Johnson Wagner at 5 Clubs Golf, which is awesome. You should check it out. But he's also the premier steak enthusiast, I think, in the world of golf. So please welcome to the program, Brendon de Jonge. Brendon, thanks, and welcome to the long game.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for that intro.
Is steak usually one of the first 3 things when people introduce you? You're a huge steak fanatic. Where does that come from?
Growing up in Africa, chicken was considered a vegetable. So steak was that was the go-to for us. And I love it. We got good meat in this country, so I've been lucky.
Awesome. We'll get into that. You spoke about growing up in Africa. Wanted to get just your background story. Tell everyone about, you're born and raised in Zimbabwe. Talk about just the Zimbabwe golf scene, you getting into golf. I assume Nick Price probably had a lot to do with that, but how did you find the game and grow coming up in a country maybe not known so much for golf?
Well, I grew up in a big sporting family. My older brother was a good player himself. My dad was a very good rugby player, and then took up golf sort of later in his life. I say later, he was probably about 35, 40 when he took it up. And I was kind of the young one, the young whippersnapper that would tag along, go out with them, and play as many holes as they would let me at first, and then kind of as I got better and better, tagging along sort of turned into playing games with them, and then from there it kind of turned into where my dad would let me into their regular 4 they had what was called the Wednesday Club, so I would play their Wednesday Club with them, and then that entailed maybe having a couple beers with the older guys after the round, which was always great. Something I'd certainly look forward to. Probably wasn't as of age where I should have been doing that, but the laws were a little bit more relaxed in Zimbabwe than they are here. But yeah, as I say, grew up in a huge sporting family, and I actually had to make the choice between playing cricket and golf, and went down the path of playing golf.
Are there anything that you can lean from one to the other that help swing, I guess? But I have some friends that played close to professional baseball, and their coaches would never let them play golf in the off season because they thought it messed up their swing. Is there any synergy there?
No, cricket was a little bit different because when you hit a cricket ball, it's a lot lower to the ground than a baseball is. So it was obviously more of a similarity there to the golf swing. I don't think it really messed it up. I know if I'd been playing a lot of cricket and then went and played golf, it maybe took a little bit of time to get into it. I don't think one helped the other or hurt the other, but yeah, there was definitely, as I say, a big choice that I had to make between the two.
What was your relationship with golf and instruction? Were you self-taught? Did you get a teacher in there early on? What's your backstory?
So there was a guy actually, unfortunately, passed away a couple of years ago named Roger Bayless, and Roger Bayless grew up teaching Nick Price, and then grew up teaching every successful junior golfer through there. And Roger was one of those guys that you could ask him for as much or as little information as you wanted. He didn't teach everybody the same way. Just a great guy. Honestly, would put him kind of, obviously doesn't have the the history of a Butch Harmon, but that kind of guy, would talk to you more about life and golf with life than just the golf swing itself. So a super guy to be able to bend his ear and just pick his brain. He'd been around a long time and had seen a lot of good things.
One topic that I've become so I have later in life, I've played golf my whole life, but later in life, like after having kids, after having like a little bit of success business wise, I fell into a little bit more time, have more time to play. I started going to this guy. We've had him on the podcast. He basically was like, yeah, man, you've been playing golf for 20 years the wrong way. and
Nice to hear.
it's amazing. And I got down to like a low single digit handicap, but like my grip was wrong, my swing direction was wrong, so many things. And I think since then, the last 2 years, I've just become obsessed with like, man, I love this game so much. I've peeled back all the layers of the mechanical side of the swing, and I'm starting to see, like, I know a lot of people talk about the mental side of this game, but as a hobby, it's so fun how much how much the mechanics matter. Where do you fall on that spectrum? Are you a tinkerer? Are you a field player? You obviously had this great guy that was influential in your life early on, but where do you fall on that spectrum? And maybe even with the lens of like, what do you see from a lot of amateurs?
I fall very much into the feel side of it. I hated the mechanical side of it. Definitely a field player, and through the times when I actually was playing well, I think it was because I knew my golf swing and I knew the feels I had, and it certainly was not what I would call the everyday golf swing. And I had a unique move, no doubt about it. It looked like I was slightly over the top. It really wasn't. It was just that I sucked the club so far on the inside going back. But no, it was definitely I played by my feels, and I knew if something was off, then I needed to do this. And I think that's key. That you need to know your own golf swing. Everybody swings a club slightly differently in one way or another. I think it's such a key to know your own golf swing. Then you can fix it yourself. Something goes a little bit wrong. Okay, I need to do this. Obviously with the pros out there, a lot of these guys they've got somebody there every single week that's watching every single shot they hit, and they're hitting a lot of shots on camera, so they can see that. But I would say the key for an amateur is definitely knowing your own golf swing.
Have you seen guys kind of since you come from that field player camp? Is there anybody that you obviously don't have to name a name? I'm just thinking, like, did you come up around someone who got so obsessed with the mechanics and didn't go out and play the game, and you kind of saw your path split differently?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. A really good friend of mine, I will name his name, Bruce McDonald. He was a wonderful guy. He's one of those guys that you walk down the range and you watch him hit golf balls and you think to yourself, there's no way that this guy won't succeed as a pro. And then, he got obsessed. He got obsessed with swinging the club perfectly. And, just instead, we've heard it 1,000 times, started playing golf swing instead of playing golf. And it's the worst mistake you can make.
So coming through, you came through Q school in 07, was it right? And you're on tour. Can you talk just a little about like what kind of a culture shock was that for you, or either going from finding a caddy or figuring out week to week where are you renting with friends on tour, or are you staying in hotels? What was kind of that transition like for you going from
I did a little bit
Zimbabwe
of
to
both.
tour?
There was certainly times when we would get houses. A lot of times when we would rent. Oh, sorry, excuse me, stay in a hotel. A little bit of both. I felt like if we were in hotels for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, you needed to break it up and maybe get a house. As far as a caddy goes, they seek you out. They're looking for a job as well, starting out, and they're hoping to catch the next big thing. So you find that guy that you're compatible with. I would luckily enough found a couple guys that I was very compatible with, and really had two caddies throughout my entire career, guys that both worked for me for a long time. But it's hard, you're spending so much time together with a caddy, more time than you are with your wife. So you better find somebody that you're really comfortable with and have a lot in common and a lot to talk about on the golf course.
I was watching this interview with Spieth and Greller the other day, and they were talking about one of the biggest mistakes they made early on in their relationship was when Jordan first got on tour, they would go stay together, and they're
Yeah.
like, that was the biggest mistake. Like, let's have our own space. And I was like, yeah,
True.
I can see how that would be miserable.
I had a guy that worked for me for about 7 years, Phil Lowe. and I think we had dinner together maybe once in 7 years. It was, we needed our time. I needed to be away from him. He needed to be away from me. And it was kind of understood. We would finish the round, and if I'd go hit balls, I'd go hit balls. And then after that, he'd go his separate way and I'd go my separate way. And it was necessary. You're spending, as I say, so much time together, and it's easy to fall into a bad rut when you're actually staying together as well.
I was going to say, you've got to find someone who likes steak, but maybe that's not the case. You need to, get a vegetarian caddy so you can spend a little more time apart.
A big chicken guy. You need a chicken guy.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's plenty of players that like steak. We'd go find some good restaurants in the area. But yeah, it's necessary to get away from your caddy, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
This game is such a mental. I feel this as an amateur player. This is not even. I have a real job. What I do on the golf course doesn't matter at all. But it's so easy to place my self-worth into how I'm playing. Right? You did this for a living very successfully. Did you have any mental tricks or mental, games to play with yourself? How do you separate those things, especially when this is your career, when this is your full-time job?
It's not easy, but I was pretty good at it. Without blowing my own horn here, I definitely better than most at leaving golf at the golf course, and by the time I got home to see wife and kids, whatever, I was kind of away from it. Now, of course, there were times when things weren't going great, and it's very, very hard to separate the two. But I would say for the most part, I was pretty good at leaving it there, and I think probably because I had a lot of other interests off the golf course. I think guys, and especially this younger generation now, they seem to have no other interests. It's just golf all the way. And I think when you're like that, it's very, very difficult to remove yourself. You kind of, as you say, you're basing your self-worth on your golf game, and it's not a healthy place to be. I would love to come home. I was always a huge sports fan, so I would find what other sport was going on. I loved fishing. I'd do a bunch of that. I loved to cook. I'd do a bunch of that. So there was always kind of an outlet for me, which I think was a big help.
So going back to just the mental state of golf, and I would assume that was never more tested than maybe the 2013 President's Cup, just being in kind of hostile soil, playing Tiger Woods. What do you remember about that weekend, or that week really, and just how different it was from any other type of golf experience you had?
And I've talked about this a lot. It was certainly the highlight of my career. I mentioned it earlier to you guys. I grew up playing a bunch of cricket, and this was my chance to get back involved in the team sport of stuff. So the team aspect was awesome. We kind of got robbed of that team room atmosphere just because the weather was so bad. It was a shocking weather week. So we were at the golf course sort of until dark, until 9 o'clock every night, and then we were back out there 5 o'clock. So it kind of took away from a little bit of the team aspect in the room. But I remember just even the small things, the bus ride. We had a 45-minute bus ride back into downtown Columbus from Dublin, and sitting on the bus, and the first day we're going back, Angel Cabrera yells out, "Dos cervezas, please." So somebody brings him 2 beers, and that was so cool just to see that there was that laid back atmosphere. We're playing one of the biggest tournaments that all of us have played, but guys are willing to have a couple beers, and it was awesome getting to know these guys a little bit better. Obviously I knew everybody, but just on the surface, you're spending sort of an entire week with them. You're getting to know these guys really, really well, and you make friendships that sort of last a lifetime. I speak to a lot of those guys all the time now, and it's all from that week.
When do you put something like that on your radar? I know the first President's Cup was early 90s, like 94. Is that something you were aware of growing up? And at what point in your career did you think that was a possibility that you could play?
Yeah, no, very aware of it. Because we followed what Nick Price did very closely, and Nick was a big part of all those early President's Cups. I remember the one vividly that they actually won in '98 at Melbourne, the only time the internationals have won. I remember watching a lot of that one. I was 18 at the time. And then as far as my radar, I I got fairly close to making the team in 2011. I was a part of all the meetings. I'm a part of some of the clothes fittings and that, but I always felt like I was slightly on the outside there. It would have been a huge shock to me to make that team. But then 13, I had a nice year. I played very, very solid, and I was kind of sort of right there or thereabouts around that sort of 10, 11, 12, 13 spot on the international list, and then played very well through the FedEx Cup playoffs. So then I knew then from there was a very good possibility that I might get a nice phone call.
I have a million questions about playing in that, but first I got to ask: they fit you for the clothes before you make the team?
Yeah. There's a lot of fittings. They want to make sure that everybody's very, very prepared. So you're getting fit for stuff kind of a month before, and then
Wow.
if they don't need to make it for you, then they just throw that away.
Jeez. Interesting. So you got paired up with Ernie Els that week. How did
Yeah.
that come about, that pairing? Was that something going into the week you knew about, or just kind of worked and you kept rolling with it?
I was actually, this came about after the fact. I was very flattered that I had played with Ernie the final round of the Deutsche Bank, which was our second round of the playoffs. And after that round, Ernie had gone to Nick Price and said, "I found my partner. I'm definitely playing with him all week." So as I say, I was extremely flattered by that from Ernie. It was a great fit as well. He's a awesome guy. We got on very, very well on the golf course. And it was just, it just added to what was a great week from the start.
It's funny. You guys kind of fell in love in Boston, like Dave and I. We worked together in Boston as well. So
That's right. Everything good happens in Boston.
I love that.
or Norton, which is like, I don't know, 45 minutes outside of Boston. But yeah,
It's a big man to say.
Greater
that, yeah.
Boston.
That's right.
So you got paired up against Tiger, I think, on Saturday of that week. Just talk about being in the arena with Tiger Woods in a competitive, hostile environment like that.
It was actually pretty funny because Nick let us know. We were sitting there and we had finished our third round match, and he came over to Ernie and he said, "You and Brendon are playing Tiger and Kuchar." And Ernie was mad. He was mad. He was struggling with the putter at the time, to the point, not quite where he had the yips, but he was definitely struggling with the putter. And he essentially said to Nick, "How can you throw me into this cauldron? You know I'm struggling with the putter." So I'm thinking, I'm standing there on the outside. I'm like, this is great. This big man's pissed off because we got to go play Tiger Woods, and I'm his partner. Anyway, we played really, really good in the alternate shot there. We had them. I think we were 3 up with 4 holes to go. Then Tiger hits one of his miraculous shots. He hits a 5-wood in there to about 2 feet on 15, and they make eagle there. Now we're 2 up with 3 to go. I bury one right in the middle of the lake on 16. So now 1 up with 2 to go. And then thankfully Tiger missed a very makeable putt on 17. And then it came down to Ernie's putter. He made about a 4 or 5 footer on the last hole for us to beat them 1 up. And you know what? He's got so much past trauma with Tiger, I guess, that you could see how much it meant to him actually making that putt and getting 1 over on Tiger.
Would you say that's the most nervous you've been on a golf course?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I remember the first tee shot on Thursday. So starting out the week, I had a 3-wood in my hands, and Ernie kind of looked at me and he shook his head and he said, "No, no, no, no. You want to look down at something that's got a much bigger head than that." And sure enough, I grabbed the driver, and thank goodness, because I was shaking.
It's a unique position, right? Because even, I mean, a lot of pros have played with Tiger, but the competitive part about that, you're playing the whole field often, and rarely are people in the same group with Tiger playing, in a tournament down the stretch against him. It's really those Ryder Cups and the President's Cups where people are getting that one, or in your case, 2 versus 2. Were there things you picked up from that, or what was his intensity like? Could you feel it, that he was kind of turning it on, or was it? I'm sure you've played with him in practice rounds or rounds on tour before. Was it any different in that arena?
Honestly, yeah, there certainly was. You could feel the intensity, but he was great. If you hit a good shot, he was very, very willing to tell you good shot. There were a couple other guys that played on that American team that weren't exactly the same way, but yeah, he gave credit where credit was due, and after the match, he couldn't have been more gentlemanly. He said, "You guys played great. You deserve to win that match. Well done." So I always had a ton of respect for Tiger, but I gained even more after that match that we played.
So now that you've kind of moved on from your playing career, do you miss that kind of competition still? How do you simulate it? Are you still playing? Are you still keeping the game in shape?
Um, I don't think you can completely simulate it. There was a stretch there when I was done playing when the last thing I wanted to do was play golf. I was burnt out. I was absolutely hating it. I
Yeah.
could go 6 months without touching a club and I'd be just fine. I'm now thankfully kind of coming around a little bit. I'm starting to enjoy playing again. I'm enjoying going on guys trips to play some cool places. But yeah, I was so burnt out that I removed myself from the game for a while. About 2017, 2018. I wanted nothing to do with golf. I wish I hadn't got to that place, but it happens. And as I say, thankfully, I'm back to where I'm starting to enjoy playing again.
And what was like? Take us to the end of that place, like the end of your run on tour. Like what was happening in that 2017 2018 era that led you to be like, I don't want to see these clubs forever.
So I dealt with a couple little injuries. I tore some intercostal muscles a couple times. I remember the second time that I did it, I had been away from competition for 5 6 months, and the last thing I wanted to do was go and play an event. I was so comfortable at home. I was enjoying the everyday life of a typical dad. And the last thing I wanted to do was go and play any kind of competitive event. So it's something obviously sparked in my head there. I was like, you know what, that's not the way I should be feeling. I should be raring to go, being 6 months removed from the game. And it just kind of went from there. Every time I did get into an event or went and played, I'd be through sort of 6 7 8 holes, and I'd be thinking, you know what, this is not where I want to be. This is not what I want to do. I'm missing a bunch of stuff at home. And it wasn't a happy place at all.
How old were your kids at the time?
At the time, my kids would have been probably 12 and 10. So just getting into competitive sports as well. Yeah, it was a nice time to be home. It really was. And looking back, I'm very thankful for it. But yeah, I wish I hadn't got to that place where I hated the game as much as I did.
Was it because you were hurt and you weren't able to play at the level that you wanted, or was it just like your kind of career had just run its course and you're like, man, I've made enough money, I don't have to worry. But I'm not in the top 10 in the world. Like you're kind of, I don't want to say no man's land, but if I think of it as a business, right? You've made a bunch of money, you were very successful, but you see life has other things and you're just going to put this away for a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, and I think you are in no man's land. You don't want to put in the work that it takes to get back to where you were, but you don't want to play the poor golf that you're playing. So it's kind of a vicious cycle there. But you find yourself kind of definitely in a little bit of no man's land. And yeah, the injuries certainly added to it. I lost some speed. It takes you a while to get the trust back as well. But I certainly wouldn't say a dark place, because I was never got to that, but so a point where I was not enjoying golf.
Yeah, it seems to be. I mean, we don't know you that well, but but it seems to be that does seem to be your overall kind of personality. Like, hey, man, this is a game. I got a family. My life is good. It doesn't fill me up. It doesn't motivate me. And it is a grind. Even playing in a 4-day tournament with your buddies somewhere. Casey and I always talk about like, man, a very underrated thing is how much of a grind it would be to be on tour. You have no days off during the week. You're away from your family. You got to do the pro-am dance. You got to go practice. And you got to do Thursday, Friday. You might not even make any money. Then you do make the cut and you're grinding. Just the mental burden of that is so underratedly exhausting. I can't imagine these guys who have had 10, 20, 25-year careers out there, just the grind of that. And you know what? It does make sense why people would go take the money from an alternative
Yeah.
tour to live a little bit of a more comfortable, less stressful life.
Yeah, the grind is hard, and I tell you, the thing is, like, the little things. If you're playing well and somebody screws up your hotel reservation, you don't think twice about it. When you're hacking, you're struggling, you show
Yeah.
up, all you want to do is get in your hotel room, go and chill for a little while, and like, oh, sorry, we don't have your reservation. That pisses you off. Your flight gets delayed a couple hours. You know what? I made $1 million last week. I'm not too worried about my flight being delayed. When you're struggling, that flight gets delayed and you're furious. It's just, and it just kind of adds
Right.
up over time.
Can you apply that too to, as Dave mentioned, like the pro-am stuff you get to deal with during the week? Like if you're not playing well, is that a worse day for that executive from wherever? Or
It certainly can be. I was one of those guys. I actually enjoyed the pro-ams. I enjoyed the getting out there and BSing with some guys where golf was secondary, and I made some great relationships. I signed a deal with some guy because I outdrove him off my knees. I think guys look at the pro-ams wrong, and I think it's getting worse and worse. I remember talking to Tim West is the guy on tour who runs all the pro-ams throughout the year. And Tim was saying that over the last 2 years, he's had over 200 complaints from guys playing in the pro-ams with the pros. And these guys are out there and they've either got their swing instructor with them or they're out on their phone the whole time. Wednesday's about these guys. We can't play the tournaments without the sponsors. And I feel as though guys have they missed that memo at rookie orientation.
All right, hold on. We gotta rewind that. You signed a deal with somebody because you outdrove him on your knees. Tell us that story, please.
Well, this guy was quite a character. So we made the turn after 9 holes, and this guy disappeared. He left for 30 minutes. I have no idea where he went, but I know that he went and took a couple shots of something because he shows
100%.
He shows up on the 10th tee, and we've been there waiting, as I say, 30 minutes. We've let 2 groups play through. And anyway, so we're about, I think we're on number 14 at Seaside playing the McGladrey. And this guy says to me, I guess this was his party trick. He's like, you ever hit a ball off your knees? And I'd hit a bunch of balls off my knees, but I said to him, no, I never have. I've never tried it, whatever. Anyway, so this guy puts one down and he hits it off his knees, and he hits it pretty good. He said, he looks at me. He's like, I tell you what, I will sign a deal with you on this tee box right now if you outdrive me off your knees. I was like, done, go for it. I managed to hit it sort of 20, 30 yards past him off my knees. Sure enough, signed a 1-year deal with the guy. He honored it. Got my agent's details, and we were done. But this
hold on,
guy
like a sponsorship deal, like they paid you a sponsorship for a year because
yep,
it's amazing.
corporate deal on my left chest. But yeah, this guy was a character. He was. I mean, I could tell you some stories about him that I probably shouldn't. But yeah, these programs can be a lot of fun if you get paired with the right guys. It can make for a cool day.
Well, you mentioned something. You said guys look at the pro-ams the wrong way now, and I hadn't thought about it until you mentioned it. But I guess if you treat yourself like you are, right, the company of one, your business, your LLC is Brendon, right? And so if you're out there, okay, maybe golf isn't going to be my whole life. What opportunities do I have either to increase my value now or potentially something off the course? Is that what you mean when you talk about guys seeing it as a burden? Fuck this. I don't want to have to go through this whole process where, hold on, there's an opportunity to surround yourself with a bunch of the people that play in these programs are most often very successful business people,
exactly right.
Entrepreneurs.
Yep. Yes, 100%. And we're given Tuesday is your day. You go play a practice round. You go grind on your game on Tuesdays. Wednesday's about these guys. You're out there to make it the most enjoyable day you possibly can for the sponsors. And as I say, I feel like a lot of these younger guys have missed the memo there. And as I say, I signed a deal with that. I talked to a lot of guys that I played pro-ams with. Now that I'm done playing, I'll go play corporate outings for these guys, and it's a great way to make a little bit of income, all because you spent 5 hours with them and you actually made a good impression and, did the right thing. It doesn't take a lot to be out there and go read a couple putts for a guy or to cut it up with him. The amateurs love it when you give them shit if you do it in the right way, and
totally. I mean, that's just like golf. That seems just like golf, right? Just same way you play with your buddies, whether you're a pro or not. I would love that. Can you? You're the first tour pro that we've had on, and us having this conversation reminded me of something we've talked before. How do sponsorships work? Like, do you have free reign, unlimited inventory on your shirt, your bag, your hat? Do you have a business partner? How do you think about that stuff? How do you is it free reign to maximize the money that you want? Can you take us into that world a little bit? I'm super interested in hearing.
Yeah, typically it's something that your agent will handle, and he'll try and find a sponsor that's gonna make sense for you. It would. Sometimes it doesn't always work out like that. You might have some guys that offer you a sponsorship, and it doesn't. It's not something that you would really align yourself with.
Say maybe maybe Patrick Cantlay and DeWalt Tools.
Yes, exactly. But
He outdrove the executive from DeWalt Tools on his
No,
knees at a pro-am.
I'm guessing that
no
Cantlay.
one says DeWalt Tools in my mind than like Patrick Cantlay, but
Yeah, I'm
that's a
guessing
separate.
Cantlay's not hitting a lot of shots off his knees in pro-ams. He kind of does things a little bit differently, but just happens to be a hell of a golfer. And
Sure.
these guys know that they're going to get a lot of TV time if you put your name on his hat. So that's
But you have a so you have an agent, but is it typically like a bundle? Like, hey, we're gonna the main thing is Brendon's bag, and we're gonna do the bag and the hat, but also and then we're gonna pay him X. But there's also a bunch of are there other commitments that you have to
Yep.
do as part of that? They try to bundle it together.
Exactly. So an agent will approach somebody and be like, it's going to cost X for a sleeve, or it's going to cost X for a chest, or X for a hat. And then you will probably get most companies, you'll sign on for something and you'll give them 3 or 4 corporate days throughout the year where you go play with some of their biggest customers, and where you're responsible for hosting those guys and making sure that they all enjoy the day. But yeah, the agents excuse me, will negotiate the majority of those deals. Every
Did you
now
have
and
a
then you'll do one
brand?
yourself.
Did you have a club? What club company were you with?
I played Titleist through my whole career.
Still today?
No, no.
What do you play now?
I am playing sub 70 irons, which are the nicest irons I've ever hit. Small custom direct to consumer group out of Sycamore, Illinois. And these honestly, these irons feel absolutely great. I wouldn't be surprised to see these guys become a pretty big player in the market if they want to. And then I play a different driver every time I tee it up because I don't know where the ball's going.
So are you going in the basement, like in your old stash? You got like the 975D and all the old models down there? Or?
Oh yeah. It's all come out. I mean, I've tried it all. Some of them work, some of them don't. Some of them I'm a little embarrassed to bring out, but yeah, anything that goes forward and somewhat straight might stay in the bag for a little while.
How did these guys get on your radar?
The sub 70 guys, I actually did I did a podcast for them. As we wrapped it up, he said to me, "Would you mind if I sent you a set of irons?" And I was very frank with him. I said, "I've never heard of you guys, but sure, go ahead." Sent me a set of irons, and honestly, as I say, the best feeling irons I'd hit. And I made sure that I got it out there to a lot of pros, and they were very willing to send a lot of sets to guys. And I've got quite a few friends that are starting to play them in this area.
Cool.
Our parting gift will be a T-shirt, not a set of clubs. So,
hey, it looks awesome. I'll take it.
Talking about just sponsorship too and stuff on your shirt got me thinking. Something else Dave and I have talked a lot about recently fascinates us, and it reminded me just looking at you right now. How do there'll be some guy on tour from Austria or somewhere, and they have this incredible journey to the tour, and then it's like college, some Big Ten school, or like or I don't know, Alabama. How do all these schools recruit? Like, how did you find your way from Zimbabwe to Virginia Tech?
So I was down in South Florida playing some junior golf. I played a bunch of AJGA events down there. The
Yep.
Zimbabwe Junior Golf Association used to do a great job of sending their top 2 juniors at the time to play in the Ledbetter Junior, the Durrell Junior, and the Orange Bowl, which are always kind of around Christmas time over here. And that was sort of our opportunity to showcase our talents as it is in front of whichever coaches were out there watching. Virginia Tech for me it made perfect sense. We obviously we didn't get to come on a visit, but there were 3 or 4 Zimbabwean guys that had played at Virginia Tech before I did. So that was kind of I could pick their brains, rely on word of mouth from those guys, and they all had a wonderful time. So it was a bit of a no-brainer for me. I had some nice offers at some other places, but certainly don't regret it at all.
So what's the connection between Zimbabwe and Virginia Tech? Because I know Scott Vincent, who plays on Live Now, was
Yep.
after you, but he went to Virginia Tech too. So is there a pipeline there? Or a
Yes,
coach,
very much so. Very much so. I think if you look at a lot of these college programs, I know Augusta State always had a pipeline into the UK. They would always have a bunch of guys out of the UK playing there. Well, and then Patrick Reed probably scared everybody else off. But you look at it like that, and there's typically a pipeline into a certain junior program, and for Virginia Tech it was Zimbabwe. As I say, a couple guys played prior to me. And then probably 6 or 7 after me actually came from Zimbabwe there.
Interesting. So wanted to get your take on the current state of pro golf too. Dave and I talked about this, I think just last week when the SSG announcement got made and just everything changing with the tour. We were saying to each other, what would guys that played on tour 10, 15 years ago think about this? So we have you on. What do you think about all the changes to the tour? Obviously, Liv forced their hand a lot, but
Yeah.
it seems like an entirely different tour than when you were playing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think you can't look back at it without having a little bit of envy. I mean, these guys are playing for so much money now, and obviously, it took a competitive or a competition coming in from somewhere else for the tour to find all this money for them to start playing for. Listen, I want to start out by saying I feel I'm not mad at anybody that went over to Live. I fully understand it. It made perfect sense. And I'll say it. If somebody had come to me and offered me a bundle of cash, I would have gone in an absolute heartbeat. I was never under the illusion that I'm going to be one of those guys that's going to be playing for 19 majors or anything. I would have jumped on that ship and gone in a heartbeat. And I'm not surprised at all to see Rory do a 180. He now fully understands that, like, listen, not everybody's in my boat financially. This is a great opportunity for guys to set themselves up for the rest of their lives and generations to come. So don't feel any ill will towards any of those guys at all. I hate where the game's at as far as that it's fractured. I really do. I want nothing more than to see these guys playing against each other week in, week out, or as often as possible. I've watched very little of Live Golf, but I actually did turn it on the other week when Sunday got rained out at Pebble. And the product's would take a little bit of getting used to. It's very, very different. I didn't hate it, but I really do miss watching some of these guys play golf. I love watching John Rahm play. I love watching Sergio play. Sergio's a good friend of mine. We played a bunch of golf together growing up and junior golf. I miss that kind of stuff. So I would love to know what the next move is. I understand why you would align yourself with SSG. That money's great. It gives them a little bit of bargaining power. But it doesn't move us any closer to reuniting everybody playing together. That's the problem I had with that move.
Do you think that can happen? Like, I guess as a fan on the sidelines, I'm just kind of hoping. I'm trying to be like, you know what? I'm not even trying to like whatever happens, happens. Hopefully, and at some point, all these guys will be back playing together. Do you think we will get there? Is that where this ultimately leads?
Yes, I do. I think. Listen, I'd be guessing as much as the next guy as far as a time frame, but I think we are going to end back up there, and I'm hoping that it's sooner than later. I really am. I feel like perhaps all it would take is a couple moves from some really big names going over there now, and where the tour would be forced to have to do something now.
I mean, it's gotten pretty damn close.
Yeah.
Like, right? It used to kind of be like, oh, like I could see why people went, but like, who's really over there? If you kind of run those two teams right next to each other now, obviously, I think that you still have the Cantlay, Xander, Spieth, JT. So we still have all those guys on tour, but it's a lot closer than it was. And I think, to your point, if one or two of those types of guys goes, then it's like really just a coin flip.
Yeah,
That Live event you were talking about that Sunday was one of the. I tuned in. I haven't watched a lot of Live either, but that was one of the first times, and that leaderboard kind of fell the right way for the day the tour was rained out. It was like all of the marquee names that had defected to over there, and it really opened everyone's eyes, I think, to like, wow, this is really a fractured game. It's no longer just it's the sum of the whole that's gone over there. It was
very much
impressive.
so. And I couldn't help but feeling like, as I watched that leaderboard scrolling up and down there, whatever, there were guys that obviously I knew they had gone over there, but hadn't even thought about how much I actually really did miss them playing.
Right.
I think Joaquin Niemann ended up winning that week. That guy is a world beater. He's going to be a young player that's going to, win so much. So yeah, I hope that we're getting closer. It does feel like it, maybe a little bit delusional there, but it does feel like we're moving in the right direction.
And speaking of the tour, you've played in many waste management opens. Had a T6, I think, in 2013. You've tweeted out a great video from you tweeted out yesterday of a great shot. You almost had a hold out one year. So you've seen that kind of grow over the years. It's obviously grown a lot since the Tiger hole-in-one, but just in like the 10 years since you've started playing over there, how did you see it change, and what are your thoughts? Because they're getting a lot of shit today just for
It was
all
a
the
shit
players.
show.
Yeah.
It is. It's turning into an absolute shit show. Like, listen, and we've talked about this a lot. I was talking about it with Johnson Wagner. I have no problem with the chaos. I really don't. I just don't like when there's somebody that's influencing a shot. I don't like somebody yelling in someone's backswing where they're intentionally trying to be a distraction. Like I don't care about the rest of it. I really don't. As long as nobody's getting hurt and it's not getting dangerous, whatever. You understand as a pro that you're going to deal with it for the week. You might hear some personal abuse. That's fine. It really doesn't matter. You hope that you're strong enough mentally to let it go. I know there was a video out there of Zach Johnson. I guess somebody was giving him shit about his Ryder Cup captaincy, and he didn't take that very well. Confronted the guy, got in his face. I mean, but you kind of go into that week and you accept it. You understand that it's going to happen. But yes, I don't like when it gets to the point where guys are directly trying to influence the outcome of a shot.
Did you ever have anything like that in your career where something felt personal on the course, or you got into it with somebody heckling you?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I remember at the President's Cup, I hit one over there to the right on number 9, and I'm over there over my ball, and some guy looks at me and he's like, "De Jonge, why don't you go the fuck back to where you came from?" And I'm thinking to myself, does he want me to go back to Charlotte? Does he want me to go back to Zimbabwe? I didn't really register that much. I'm just, thank goodness my caddy wasn't over there at the time, because my caddy was a confrontational fellow, and he might have knocked this dude out.
Well, before Dave asked you that, I was going to ask similarly. Waste management, it's its own kind of beast, but were there stops on tour you knew like, oh, the crowd's going to be a little bit more rowdy outside of President Cup stuff, just normal tour stuff? Like, was the East Coast trip, like playing New York, Boston, was that a little bit more intense than a Florida swing?
Oh, very much so. I mean, New York, you hear some bad stuff, actually. Like, I hate to think what that Ryder Cup's going to be like. That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough to manage. I think there's a very good chance that might get a little bit out of hand. But yeah, typically in the Northeast, you'd hear some stuff. Well, I mean, you guys know all about that, obviously. Anytime that a fan base prides themselves on being dicks, you know that you're going to hear some stuff.
Of course.
And I mean, the nature of going to a golf event is we're going to walk around, drink a bunch of beers, walk and just explore. And guess what happens?
Especially a region that doesn't get it that much, right? Like,
yeah,
in Boston, we come around once a year.
Yeah, no, it's those guys are going to be amped up, and then obviously, there was a little bit of ill feeling towards the end of this Ryder Cup in Italy as well. So I think that's all going to be part of it. And yeah, I hope they do a good job. I hope it doesn't get too far out of hand. We're growing up in a time here with a little bit of one-upmanship, and what's next. Like you just don't want it to get too out of hand.
Totally agree.
We make picks on our podcast every week, but we have the guardrail of we have to pick guys outside of the top 150 just to make it more interesting. And Casey, I have no idea why. I think because Charlie was sponsored by Waste Management. He picked Charley Hoffman last week, and so he's texting me all weekend. Are you watching this? Are you watching this? I'm like, man, Casey didn't watch half of the Super Bowl because he's watching this damn playoff between Charley Hoffman and Nick Taylor.
150 to 1.
I tell you what, that's a hell of a pick. Charlie hasn't been relevant for a long time. So
it was a complete just clown show of a pick because he thought it's funny that he's sponsored by Waste Management. He always had the green hat, and it worked out. This is a silly,
almost. That sounds like deep research. That's not a clown pick.
Yeah, there's something off there. You're right. You're right.
There's Dave picked Doug Gim, who was like top 5 almost all weekend. So
yeah, that's pretty good too.
Talking about.
Yeah, I'm sure we're not going to be as good this week. Speaking of this week, the tour rolls into Riviera. Dave and I were talking about this before the show. Can you explain why players revere that place so much? Every time they go, you hear the players talk about how much they love Riviera. What is it about the course that players love?
It's old school. There are absolutely no tricks. It's a great variety of holes. You know, you've got long holes, you've got short holes, you've got unique holes. You've got a par three with a bunker right in the middle of the green. It's as I say, it's right in front of you. There's not a single penalty area on the golf course. There's that barranca that runs through the eighth, the middle of the eighth there, that sort of feeds through the golf course, but not an actual penalty area on the golf course. And it's a, as I say, a wonderful variety of holes. It's got a great flow to it, and it's, you know, I hope it's hard and fast. I don't think it's going to be. It's been so wet on that West Coast. Because when Riviera plays hard and fast, it's so much fun to watch. It was always one of my favorites.
Speaking of just the soft conditions, remind me, how often when you were playing was there lift clean in place? I feel like it's almost every week now. Of course, this tour, this swing is in a West Coast, and there's been some bad weather.
Are you going to spin this? Are you going to spin this into a climate change podcast right now, Chris? How deep do you want to go?
No, I think the tour is getting a little easier on drops and lift clean in place, in my opinion. But
so there was a rule. There was a rules official that was out on tour forever, Slugger White. And Slugger would do absolutely everything in his power to avoid playing lift clean in place. I remember actually, I was a little sub story. We're playing the World Cup in China, and it was just wet. Everything, it was past Pelham. It didn't drain real well, and they'd had a ton of rain. And Slugger was driving around in the practice rounds, just kind of watching shots and trying to get guys' opinions. And he came up to me. I was always friendly with Slugger. He said, "You mind if I watch you hit your second shot into 18?" And there was just a big clump of mud on my ball. And as I hit this thing, it just shot out dead right. And Slugger, he drove away, and he's like, "Yeah, everything looks fine to me." So he was just so anti playing lift clean in place. And anyway, since then, Slugger has retired from the tour. So I'm guessing that whoever is now the chief official is probably a little bit more willing to let these guys put their hands on it.
Well, it's a weird time too. There's a delicate balance. It's like, how hard are you going to push these guys on these rules? Because if they're not happy, they're going to go take money and go play somewhere else where life is a little bit easier.
Hey, I remember hearing Sergio bitching about that right before he went over. You know, I don't have to deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fine line. Like you want these guys you want them to play in the fairest conditions. I hate when they, the ball's picking up mud in the middle of the fairway. You shouldn't get penalized for driving it dead straight.
All right. So what's a rule? What's a rule in golf that you would love to see just not exist anymore? This is something that comes up on Twitter a lot. As an example, one of mine would be, your ball's in a divot in the middle of the fairway. You should get to move it and go play. Do you have something like that?
Yeah, I would think that's one, but it's such a gray area then, because, who's to say how old the divot is? You could look at it in a divot that's somewhat grown over and still claim, hey, I'm in a divot. It does leave a little bit of a gray area. I love the rule change. The only one that really made sense to me over the last few years was that you're allowed to tap down imperfections on the green, the spike marks and stuff. That made sense to me. This dropping from your knees, I really don't understand that one. That did nothing for me. It still looks stupid.
I think I'm worse at it. I feel like I try to get more delicate with it.
Yeah, I really don't understand that one. That didn't make any sense.
I think a shot clock would help.
A shot clock would help. That's the one. I think, and I believe that maybe they're moving closer to this, that you can single out a player in a group now. It always used to be that you would have to go and put the whole group on the clock. Now you can single out a player in a group and say, you know what, we've identified that you're the slow guy in this group and you're holding everybody up. I do like that change.
Okay, so let's send him out of here with a couple of the quick hitter questions. All right.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna do some quick ones, and then we just want to hear a little bit about the podcast. But just few word answers here. We'll go try to flow through some. So, greatest shot you ever hit?
I hit an 8-iron to about 4 feet, knowing that I needed to make birdie on my last hole at the Greenbrier, and then I missed the putt.
All right, still counts though. Greatest shot you ever witnessed in person? Hit
back at that World Cup. Actually, my partner was Bruce McDonald at the time, playing the alternate shot. I drove him in a fairway bunker. He hit a rescue out of a fairway bunker to an island green to about 3 feet from the hole. Greatest shot I'd ever seen. I was walking down the fairway expecting him to lay it up, and next thing I see this ball go over my head and about 3 feet for eagle.
Wow.
I got
Tell us
some.
something
I
about.
got.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Dave.
I got two. Are you a 3-iron guy or a 7-wood hybrid guy?
I'm a 3-iron guy. I
You
like
love that
the 3-iron.
3-iron.
I'm old school. Yep.
Okay, I like that. And then shot shape wise, what was your? This is a two-parter. What was your shot shape? Or
I
is?
was a fade. I hit everything left to right. I liked seeing the ball fall that way.
And as general advice, do you believe in teaching? Do you believe in having people stick to one shot shape? Like if you're a fader, we got to get you just to play that fade.
Yes, I do. I like that you should be able to eliminate one side of the golf course. Obviously, you need to be able to move it the other way. But I feel like under pressure, you want to have that fallback shot.
All right, one more case, then I'll flip it back to you. What's your preferred go-to? What's your preferred wedge setup?
I'm always just 3 wedges, 48, 54, 60. I have messed around with 4 wedges. For a little while, I went 48, 52, 56, 60. I just didn't like it. I felt like I felt like I was in between. I probably shouldn't have been.
So is that 48 your gap wedge, or you have a pitching wedge that's like a 44,
No.
42?
Pitching wedge 48,
Okay,
gap wedge at 54, and then carry a 60-degree lob wedge.
nice. Case?
All right, tell us something about playing against the National we wouldn't know, and we'll never know.
The one that everybody talks about is how hilly it is. The one for me was, even though you're in the Masters, you're walking on eggshells. They want it to kind of feel that way. I'll tell you a very quick story. I was on the range.
As a player, you're in this tournament and you're walking on eggshells?
Yep, very much so. So I was hitting balls on the range, and I was talking to a guy that I was working with. He was sort of a stats guy, and we were talking. And my college coach came over there and watched me hit balls for 5 minutes. And honestly, within 5 minutes, one of the Green Jackets came up to me and said, Mr. de Jonge, you know what our policy is here? One person at a time on the range with you. Please make sure that you take care of this right away. So I had to ask my college coach to move along, and just one guy at a time. So they make sure that that you're still fortunate to be playing in their event.
Well, yeah, it's an invitational, right? I mean,
That's
you
right.
qualify to get in there,
Yep.
but they're inviting you to come. It's not.
That's exactly right.
That's funny. Was there a course on tour that fit your eye better than others, where just one that you'd only play once a year, but like, I can't wait to get back there. It just fits my game.
Yeah, I had a couple. Quail Hollow was one for me, and thank goodness that was at home. I always looked forward to playing Quail Hollow. That was a golf course that fit my eye, and then Hilton Head. I loved Harbour Town. Harbour Town felt like a golf course that I could always perform well at.
What about the flip side of that? A course that you're like, man, I got to play this event, but I always play bad. I hate this place. I don't play well here.
Bay Hill. I hated Bay Hill. I never played well there. It was I used to like moving the ball, as I said, left to right, and you had to aim over top of so many of those hazards when you played Bay Hill. That was one that sucked. I never played well there. It was a hard golf course as well.
I was going to say, with Quail Hollow, you once shot an 80 and a 62 on consecutive days there, correct?
I did. Yeah, I shot 80, 62, and then third round I'm playing with Mickelson, and Mickelson just in a twosome. And we're going down number 3, and he looks at me and he's like, "What'd you shoot yesterday?" I was like, "I shot 62." And he didn't say good round, didn't say anything. He was 9 under through 11, and I could tell all he wanted to do was beat 62. Thank goodness he missed a bunch of short putts coming in, but it was, typical Phil.
What'd you shoot yesterday? It's unbelievable.
That must have been an education, though, just spending 18 holes with Phil.
Yeah,
you played with him in the President's Cut too, but what do you take away from his game playing in person? Dave's a huge fan.
Huge fan of Phil's.
In the same way that I love Bryson, like just the two of those. I forget, maybe it was in Shipnook's book, but it was like, ask Phil what time it is, and he'll tell you how to build a watch.
That's spot on. He listen. I liked Phil. I thought it was educational. You'd kind of ask him a question, and then you just sit back and listen, and you take it for what it is.
Well, Brendon, the leading edge, you can't have the leading edge dig, because the leading edge dig, you're like, come on, man, I just was asking what close.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of bullshit that you've got to weave through with Phil, but I always thought it was pretty fun, and the guy was so talented. I watched him hit like a 7-iron from 220 yards and just hook this thing and get it running back down the green, whatever. But just extremely, extremely talented. But yeah, he's different.
All right, I got one more quick one, then we'll wrap up real quick. Exercising with or without headphones. Would you ever exercise without headphones? This is a long standing debate on this show.
No.
Okay. That's the right answer.
All right,
So
Casey,
you win that t-shirt I showed you earlier. Dave runs without headphones, and it's become a lightning rod topic on this.
Yeah, nobody does that, Dave. You got to change that.
Come on, man. Well, I'm gonna. Well, you don't want to see how I cook a steak. Then I'm gonna need some tips, man. This is not.
It better be rare.
It better be rare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, let's wrap up and talk about your new life. We're fellow podcasters. You're in the media game. What's been how did that come together, and what's been your experience so far? I will say that between you and Johnson, the double-edged sword of both of your facial hairs together on one podcast is electric.
Yeah, we've got a great logo coming out pretty soon. We sat around so many times drinking beer, just bullshitting with each other. And finally, it came to a point where Gary Williams at Five Clubs approached Johnson and said, "Hey, would you have any interest getting involved with us being a contributor?" And Johnson, thank goodness, said to Gary, "Yeah, I'd love to. Could we bring Brendon along as well?" And Gary said, "Yeah, absolutely." So Gary Williams and the Five Clubs guys, Steve Hall, James McCoy, they brought us aboard and kind of gave us a nice little start there. It's been fun. It's been very educational. Johnson and I didn't know the first thing about social media. Probably still don't. We're figuring it out as we go along. I'm the world's biggest hypocrite. I used to give my kids shit and my wife shit for being on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is, and now I find myself having to do that all the time. But
yeah, you're out there posting bunker tips. You got these beef tips now. Like you can't criticize them anymore.
Yeah, no, seriously. If I do, I get it thrown back in my face pretty quickly. So it's been fun. And then obviously my nickname on tour was Filet for the longest time. Because it was Brendon de Jonge filet mignon was what I was told, or because I'm a big piece of meat was the other reason. And then he was Wags, which turned into Wagyu. So Wagyu Filet Show was born like that.
It's great. I think I don't know. I see some interesting sponsors in that realm ahead. I could see you on social media with like a slow cooker. Traeger, reach out to Brendon and Johnson if you haven't yet. I see a lot of good things in your future.
Dave and I used to do this thing where for every tour stop, we'd give a restaurant review for wherever the tour was going. Having not been there at all, just kind of pick one off Yelp. But maybe you can be our official meat correspondent for every stop. So you have a Riviera tip for anyone in the area?
Honestly, I avoided going out in that traffic in LA. It was one of those where we would rent a house every year and we would go to a grocery store at the beginning of the week and we would hunker down. It sucked trying to leave the golf course and get anywhere in that traffic. So yeah, Riviera is not a good one. I mean, I definitely got some reviews for when you guys come to Charlotte. So we'll talk about it then. Yep,
we'll hit you up then.
That sounds good. Brendon, this has been a blast, man. Thank you for coming on. I got a bunch of notes. Casey and I were messaging on the side. You were we had a feeling this would be a fun to chat with you. I feel like we could hang out, have a fillet and a beer and keep this thing going. We will support your show. We'll share it with all of our listeners and everything. And thanks for coming and hanging out with us on the Long Game Pod.
You got it. Thanks very much, guys. That was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
He's talking the long game.
They played the long game. They've got to play the long game. Their experience, and they played the long game.